Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm Peter Lavelle. All right, this is going to be a series of videos that we're going to make going into the election day on Tuesday. I'm joined by Dima Babich and George Szamuely. George is my co-founder of the Gaggle, of course, here. All right, guys, I'm going to be talking to a lot of people. The Gaggle is going to be talking to a lot of people over the next, let's say, 36 hours. What's your theory of the case, George? I mean, you and I have talked quite a bit recently, and depending on what cable station you want to watch, their candidates got it in the bag. Okay, so both can't be right, George.
My theory of the case is that Trump will come out ahead Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. It will be very close, and it may not be a decisive in the sense that there'll be several states which will be still in the battle. Goes to the courts, in which there's going to be a real battle as to which votes counted. In the meantime, I think there will be riots in the streets. I think there will be absolute mayhem. I think the Democrat governors and the Democrat mayors will be encouraging the riots, and I think that to think in terms of a dangerous scenario, that there will be members of the government, members of the Trump administration, who will go over to the Democrat side, go over to the rioters, and will start urging Trump to step aside and not to go on fighting in the courts. And recognize Biden is the victor. I think that's the possibility. I don't think that the polls are right. The whole idea of a Biden landslide is, I think, out of the question, or even a Biden victory. I think that unfortunately, the most likely scenario is that Biden will steal the election.
Dima, this gets all down to, and it's I'm sad to say it, because we had 4 years to think about it. It's about the polls. Okay, that's what it really gets down to. Because if you don't believe the polls, you're not going to believe the outcome. And this is it's being built into this right now, and I'm really worried about that. And it's also, you have a media that is overwhelmingly influenced by neoliberal ideology, and so they cannot. It doesn't make any sense to them that Trump could have any appeal. I mean, they think there's something corrosive in the body politic, that why would a voter, be attracted to this candidate? Okay, 2016 was a fluke. Okay, we didn't see it coming, but they can't accept that it's going to happen again. And I'm going to be very agnostic here. I mean, it seems to me, if we look at the polls, and there's nothing else we can do, then that is that Biden has an edge. But then again, when I look at all of these rallies, I mean, I've never seen enthusiasm for a presidential candidate, and that's what Trump is, running for re-election. So it's really hard to kind of square the circle here, okay? I mean, are these just totally fanatical people, a minority of which, or is it the political elite has just gotten it all wrong? Go ahead, Dima.
Well, I think it's going to be Biden's election. The mainstream media love to joke about other countries, like, oh, Xi Jinping is being re-elected in China. It's going to be Xi Jinping's election, so stuff like that. Well, here the mainstream media just doesn't accept Trump for an answer. Voters are expected to vote for Biden. If his victory is not clear on the day of the election or on the night after the election, then they will start questioning the results of the mail votes. This idea that people can vote by mail makes it a very long process. That's why people were kindly asked to come and vote in the old times, because I mean, in the old times before this election, it now looks like a past epoch, because when you have these votes that came by mail, you can argue and you can challenge a lot of things in court. This process can continue for a long time.
But that's what intentional, and that's my opinion. This is intentional because George,
they're hedging their bets, the Democrats. I mean,
yeah, but it always seems like you can always find more ballots somewhere. I mean,
yes,
it's something that that it's just it defies common sense. But apparently it's we found these in a trunk of a car. Okay, I mean, it's a custody issue, and I'll make it very clear here because we're still before the election day officially. Is that I think that the Trump people made a mistake on the mail-in. I mean, for the elderly like that, they do, and they're the ones most at risk during this pandemic. I mean, that is just a verifiable fact. I mean, if you're an elderly person, you do want to be careful, okay? And so I think they kind of miscalculated on that. Another thing is that it's like 50 million people have already voted. I mean, that's a huge number, George.
I think it's even more than that now. Yeah, it's I think something half the people have already voted, which I think is wholly wrong because I think after all, elections have an election day, and people vote on that day when the campaign has finally come to an end, and they're supposedly have made up their minds on the basis of everything that the candidates have said, everything that's happened, all the information that's available. Voting halfway through the campaign to me just doesn't make much sense. Nonetheless, it's happened. But there's a real question. There's a lot of corrupt places, and like as in Philadelphia, and you can bet that they're going to be finding more and more ballots. And then they're going to say, oh, we've got these ballots, and then these ballots haven't been counted. And then they start the whole nonsense of, well, let's read the voter's intent, because somebody will say, look, they haven't done the right thing. You're supposed to use 2 envelopes. You're supposed to sign it. You're supposed to have somebody witness the signature. Say, yeah, well, that doesn't really matter. It's the voter's intent that matters. And you can see how there's going to be this drumbeat, and then you go to the courts, and who knows how the courts are going to rule.
Well,
I mean, the Supreme Court so far has been all over the place on this issue. So I think a lot's going to happen. A lot's going to depend on how Amy Coney Barrett's going to vote, and nobody knows that as yet.
Dima, I think what was the phrase that Stalin said? It doesn't matter who gets the votes, it matters who counts the votes.
Exactly.
and George just said that in different words. Go ahead, Dima.
Well, I would say the modern phrasing of Stalin's words is the main thing is who registers the candidates, not who counts the votes, who registers the candidates. Well, I mean, why I don't believe that protests of Trump's supporters cannot be successful. Well, here we have to quote Lenin, the person who controls the communications at the time it was telegraph, the person who controls telegraph and newspapers, that person controls the result of the battle.
Dima, I think you're right on one level. I think you're absolutely right. But George, the confidence that people have in the media is so low right now. See, this is what makes it so perplexing and so terribly dangerous, because you don't trust the media, you don't trust the polling agencies, and now you're saying that your candidate lost in a landslide. That's not the recipe for a good ending at all. This is a bad movie it won't have an ending for as far as I can see, because you've created the conditions of such intense distrust. What I'll end up on this, guys, here. You know what my biggest fear is? That both candidates will declare victory. George.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's very likely. Trump is not the type of person who's just going to go quietly into that good night. And I think there's no question that everyone's going to gather around, the establishment will gather around Biden and declare him the winner. The media will gather around Biden, declare him the winner. Trump isn't just going to accept that. But Trump doesn't really have the big guns on his side if, as I suspect happens, his own government rebels against him. So, and this is again goes back to what are people expecting? I mean, there is a reason why Facebook and Twitter said we aren't going to make any early declarations, because they were expecting that Trump will make an early declaration as I have won. So that's what they don't want anything like that to come out suggesting that Trump has won. No. That election victory will take place. We're going to keep counting and counting and counting until Biden has won. That moment.
Exactly.
That sounds like the EU model. You know, you keep having elections until the people vote the right way. Last word goes to you, Dima. Go ahead.
Well, I think that you're right. Both candidates, it's very possible that both candidates will declare their own victory, and that will ruin the American elections as an institution, you know, because Biden, in the end, will be declared the victor, and a lot of people in the United States will be dismayed. Why? Why is it so tragic that elections have been destroyed as an institution? In the old times, you know, if your candidate lost, you had total confidence that in 4 years, there will be another chance for you to get your agenda in, you know, that another guy will do it, maybe younger, maybe cleverer. Trump's voters, why did they come en masse to vote in 2016? They viewed it as their last chance to keep the America that they loved, you know. Now they understand that if they lose this election, during the next election, all of these 11 million illegals, you know, a completely different new media will be installed. So America that they loved will be gone forever. And they may be desperate. And elections get more and more unfair. They're getting more and more skewed in favor of neoliberals. So yes, we can expect some hysteric reaction from Trump's supporters simply because they won't be mourning the defeat of their candidate. They will be mourning the American election as a way to express their view and to bring the country that they love back to the United States.
Well, I'm going to end on this note. Dima Babich, someone that I've known for 20 years, obviously a Russian citizen, said something more profound right there about the trust in democracy in America as a result of this election than almost any talking head I've heard on cable TV. So I really appreciate that, Dima. George, Dima, thank you for doing this. The Gaggle is going to do a number of other videos prior to the election. Of course, we'll do a post-mortem. So if you like this, like, share, and subscribe, and obviously a whole lot more ahead.
Thank you.